Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If you have an old United States Jefferson nickel sitting in a coin collection, an inherited collection, an old jar, a drawer, or a box of loose change, you may want to examine it very carefully before assuming it is just another 5-cent coin. Coin number 1. This 1940 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark, particularly a coin described as being in black condition, and discuss what makes this coin interesting, what collectors should inspect, and why a claimed value of $169,000 should be treated as a special or hypothetical valuation rather than a normal market price. Current published price guides and auction records show that ordinary 1940 Philadelphia Jefferson nickels generally trade for dramatically less than that amount, while exceptionally high-grade and full steps examples can command much stronger premiums. Let's begin with the basic identification. The coin we are discussing is the 1940 Jefferson nickel, struck at the Philadelphia Mint and therefore carrying no mint mark. On Jefferson nickels from this period, the mint mark is located on the reverse of the coin, to the right of Monticello. If there is no D or S in that location on a genuine 1940 example, the coin is identified as the Philadelphia issue. Philadelphia produced more than 176 million Jefferson nickels in 1940, making this particular date and mint combination relatively common compared with some scarcer early Jefferson nickel issues. The coin was designed by Felix Schlug, weighs approximately 5 grams, measures about 21.2 millimeters across, and was made from an alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel. The story behind the 1940 Jefferson nickel is also fascinating, because this coin belongs to the earliest years of the Jefferson nickel series. The Jefferson nickel was first introduced in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel that had been produced for many years. The new design placed a portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and an image of his famous home, Monticello, on the reverse. Because the 1940 issue was produced only a few years after the series began, collectors often pay close attention to these early dates when assembling complete Jefferson nickel collections. Even though millions were produced, examples that survive today with excellent surfaces, strong luster, sharp details, and exceptionally clear steps on Monticello can become much more desirable. Now let's talk about the phrase without mint mark. Some people see a coin without a mint mark and immediately assume that something is missing or that the coin must be in error. That is not the case here. For the 1940 Jefferson nickel, the absence of a mint mark is normal for a coin struck at Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Mint did not place a mint mark on these coins. Therefore, if you have a genuine 1940 Jefferson nickel with no D or S next to Monticello, that absence is actually an important part of identifying the Philadelphia variety. It is not automatically an error. The next important subject is condition. You describe this particular 1940 Jefferson nickel as being in black condition. In coin collecting, however, color descriptions such as black, dark, brown, green, or red are not official grading categories in the same way that grades such as good, fine, very fine, extremely fine, about uncirculated, or mint state are. A coin can develop dark toning, environmental discoloration, oxidation, staining, or surface changes over decades of storage. Therefore, if a 1940 Jefferson nickel appears black or extremely dark, collectors would want to determine exactly why it has that appearance before assigning any premium value. Dark toning can sometimes be natural, especially on an old copper-nickel coin that has spent decades in an envelope, album, collection, or other storage environment. But dark surfaces can also result from improper storage, exposure to chemicals, moisture, smoke, cleaning, or environmental damage. This distinction is extremely important. Collectors generally prefer original, undamaged surfaces, and a coin that has been harshly cleaned or chemically altered may receive a details grade from a professional grading service rather than a normal numeric grade. So, when examining a black-looking 1940 Jefferson nickel, do not immediately assume that the dark appearance makes the coin rare. Instead, inspect the surfaces under good lighting. Look at Jefferson's portrait, the date, the lettering, Monticello, the rim, and the open fields. Check whether the dark color appears even and natural, or whether there are patches, scratches, spots, or signs of chemical treatment. A professional coin grader can determine whether the surfaces are acceptable and whether the toning is considered natural or problematic. The obverse of the 1940 Jefferson Nickel features Thomas Jefferson facing left. Around the portrait are the inscriptions, "Liberty, in God we trust," and the date 1940th. One of the first things you should inspect is the date. Because the value of a collectible coin depends heavily on exact identification, a worn or damaged date can create uncertainty. On a genuine 1940 coin, the numerals should have the appropriate shape and spacing for the issue. If you suspect a rare variety or an unusual error, magnification can be useful, but authentication is even more important when large values are involved. Turn the coin over and you will see Monticello, Jefferson's historic Virginia home. The reverse contains the inscriptions E pluribus unum, United States of America, 5 cents, and Monticello. The area to the right of Monticello is where you should look for the mint mark. On a Philadelphia 1940 nickel, that area is blank because no mint mark was used. Imagine finding this 1940 nickel in an old family collection. At first glance, it looks dark, almost black. You turn it over and notice that there is no mint mark beside Monticello. The date clearly reads 1940th. You begin wondering whether you have discovered a rare coin. The correct next step is not to clean it, polish it, or immediately list it online for an enormous price. Instead, carefully document the coin, photograph both sides, examine the surfaces, and compare it with reliable references. If you believe the coin has an unusual variety or error, consider submitting it to a respected professional grading and authentication service. Never clean an old coin simply because it looks dirty. This is one of the most important rules for beginning collectors. A coin that appears dull or dark may still possess original surfaces that collectors value. Cleaning can leave scratches, hairlines, unnatural brightness, or chemical residue, and those alterations can reduce collector interest. If your 1940 Jefferson nickel has dark toning, leaving the surfaces untouched is usually safer than attempting a home restoration. Another important factor is strike quality. A coin can be technically uncirculated but still have weakly struck areas. On Jefferson nickels, collectors pay particular attention to the Monticello steps because this feature can separate ordinary uncirculated pieces from premium examples. Strong full steps can dramatically increase collector interest when combined with a high grade. That is why you should inspect the reverse carefully rather than focusing only on the portrait and date. Let's also consider the historical context of 1940th. This was a period when the United States was approaching the enormous changes brought by World War II. The Jefferson nickel itself would soon undergo a major composition change. Beginning in 1942, the United States Mint introduced the famous wartime silver alloy nickels, which contained silver and carried a large mint mark above Monticello. The 1940 nickel, however, is a pre-war composition coin containing copper and nickel rather than silver. That distinction can be important because people sometimes mistakenly assume every old nickel is a silver nickel. The 1940 Jefferson nickel is not one of the wartime silver nickels. Its metal composition is 75% copper and 25% nickel. Its collectible value comes from its numismatic characteristics, condition, rarity, strike, variety, and collector demand, rather than from silver content. A mint state coin is different because it has not MS68 example in its general guide, while the full steps category has recorded substantially higher results. This gives us an important lesson. The value of a coin is not determined by age alone. A coin can be more than 80 years old and still be relatively common. Another coin from the same year can be worth much more if it has a rare variety, exceptional strike, superior grade, or documented auction history. Age is only one piece of the puzzle. Another factor to consider is authentication. Whenever a coin is claimed to be worth tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, authentication becomes essential. Counterfeits exist, altered dates exist, added mint marks exist. and damaged coins can sometimes be presented as rare varieties. A professional grading company can authenticate the coin, assign a grade, and place it in a tamper-resistant holder with a certification number. For valuable coins, this documentation can make a major difference. The most exciting part of collecting is that you never know what you might discover. An old nickel that appears ordinary at first can sometimes turn out to have an unusual variety, a remarkable strike, or an exceptionally high grade. However, the responsible collector combines excitement with research. Instead of believing every huge valuation immediately, investigate the evidence behind it. Next, coin number 2, 1967 Jefferson Nickel, without a mint mark and described as being in green condition, with a claimed market value of $147. This is an especially interesting date because 1967 was part of an unusual period in United States coin production when circulating coins were intentionally issued without mint marks. The 1967 Jefferson Nickel was struck at Philadelphia and has a reported mintage of 107,325,800 pieces. It is made from 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighs 5 grams, and measures 21.2 millimeters in diameter. Now let's look at why the 1967 Jefferson Nickel is still an interesting coin. The year 1967 was part of the United States coin shortage era of the 1960s. During this period, the U.S. Mint produced enormous quantities of circulating coins and made several unusual production decisions. One of the most recognizable features of coins from this period is the absence of mint marks. According to PCGS, no mint marks were placed on circulating coinage during this period to discourage coin hoarding. This means that when you find a 1967 Jefferson Nickel with no mint mark, the missing mint mark is not automatically an error. In fact, the absence of a mint mark is normal for the regular 1967 issue. That is one of the first things you should remember when searching through old Jefferson Nickels. A missing mint mark can be extremely exciting when it occurs on a date where a mint mark was expected. But 1967 is different. A normal 1967 Jefferson Nickel has no mint mark. The coin was struck at Philadelphia, and the lack of a mint mark is part of the standard identification of the coin. So if you discover a 1967 nickel without a D or S, do not assume someone removed the mint mark or that the mint made a mistake. The coin is most likely a normal Philadelphia issue. Imagine finding a 1967 Jefferson Nickel that has been protected from circulation for decades. You turn it over and examine Monticello under magnification. The building is sharply defined, the lettering is clear, and the surfaces appear unusually clean. You then notice a strange green color across parts of the coin. At that point, you might wonder whether the green appearance makes the coin extremely rare. The answer requires much more investigation. The phrase green condition is not an official U.S. coin grading category. Professional grading companies use standardized grading systems such as good, very fine, extremely fine, about uncirculated, and mint state, with numerical grades used to describe the quality more precisely. A green appearance is instead a description of the coin's color or surface appearance. That color could come from natural toning, environmental exposure, storage materials, contamination, or chemical reactions. Therefore, the green color by itself does not establish a $147,000 value. This is extremely important for anyone watching a coin collecting video. Colors can make coins look fascinating, but color alone does not determine rarity. A greenish Jefferson Nickel could have attractive natural toning, or it could have environmental damage. In some cases, green material on a copper-containing coin may indicate corrosion or exposure to chemicals. Because the 1967 Jefferson Nickel contains 75% copper and 25% nickel, its surfaces can change over time depending on storage conditions. So what should you do if your 1967 nickel appears green? The most important advice is simple. Do not clean it. Do not use vinegar, lemon juice, baking soda, metal polish, rubbing alcohol, abrasive materials, or other household products to try to restore the original appearance. Cleaning can leave scratches, hairlines, chemical residue, or unnatural surfaces, and these alterations can hurt the coin's collectible value. If the coin is potentially valuable, preservation is much safer than experimenting with home cleaning methods. Instead, place the coin somewhere safe and handle it carefully by its edges. Avoid touching both faces repeatedly with your fingers because oils and moisture from your skin can affect the surface. If you want to inspect the coin, use good lighting and, if necessary, a magnifying glass. Look carefully at the date, portrait, lettering, rim, reverse design, and Monticello steps. The 1967 Jefferson Nickel also belongs to an interesting period in the history of the series. During the 1960s, the United States Mint was dealing with a major shortage of circulating coins. The government was producing huge numbers of coins, and the decision to remove mint marks from circulating issues was intended in part to discourage people from saving coins based on mint origin. The 1967 nickel therefore represents more than just 5 cents. It is a small piece of the history of American coin production during the coin shortage era. Another detail worth knowing is that 1967 was not an ordinary year for collector products either. The Mint produced special mint set coins during the 1965-1967 period rather than traditional proof sets. This means collectors should distinguish between regular circulation strikes and special collector strikes when examining a 1967 Jefferson nickel. A coin that appears unusually sharp or reflective may deserve additional research before being classified simply as an ordinary circulation strike. Coin references distinguish the regular 1967 issue from special mint set pieces. If your coin has an unusual shape, missing portions of the design, an abnormal diameter, an unusual edge, or another strange characteristic, do not immediately assume it is damage. Compare it with known examples and consider professional authentication. An authenticated mint error can be considerably more interesting than an ordinary coin with discoloration. Another important factor is the possibility of a damaged coin being mistaken for an error. Coins spend years exposed to the environment and can experience all kinds of post-mint damage. A coin may be scratched, stained, chemically altered, bent, polished, heated, or exposed to other substances after leaving the mint. These conditions are not the same as genuine mint errors. Professional examination is often the best way to distinguish the two. It is also worth remembering that the 1967 Jefferson nickel is not a silver coin. The standard issue consists of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This is another common misconception when people find older-looking nickels. The famous silver Jefferson nickels were produced during World War II from 1942 through 1945 and are easily distinguished by their large mint marks on the reverse. The 1967 nickel does not belong to that silver wartime group. The weight of a standard 1967 Jefferson nickel is approximately 5 grams. A good digital scale can therefore be useful as an initial screening tool. If the weight is significantly different from the expected specification, investigate further. However, remember that a weight difference alone does not prove an error. Dirt, wear, damage, scale inaccuracies, and other factors can affect measurements. The edge should also be inspected. The standard Jefferson nickel has a plain edge. If your coin has an unusual edge appearance, especially if it looks as though another coin was used or the planche shape is abnormal, additional research may be justified. One of the most fascinating things about the 1967 Jefferson nickel is that it can teach us how complicated coin collecting really is. A beginner might see a 5-cent coin. An experienced collector sees the date, minting location, composition, strike quality, surface preservation, possible variety, possible error, and historical context. Every one of those factors can contribute to the final assessment. So if you have a 1967 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark, remember that the absence of the mint mark is normal. The coin was struck at Philadelphia, and more than 107 million were produced. The real question is whether your particular example has something unusual beyond its normal date and mint characteristics. Now let's return to the green condition. If the green color is attractive and stable, it may simply be toning or surface coloration. But if the green material looks powdery, crusty, sticky, or concentrated in certain areas, it could indicate environmental damage or contamination. In that situation, professional evaluation is especially important. Never assume that an unusual color automatically increases value. If you have one of these nickels, take a moment to examine it carefully. Start with the date. Confirm that it says 1967. Turn it over and confirm that there is no mint mark. Remember that this is normal for the 1967 issue. Examine Jefferson's portrait for wear and damage. Check the reverse for Monticello details. Look closely at the steps. Inspect the color. Determine whether the green appearance is natural-looking toning or possible environmental damage. Finally, look for anything that seems genuinely unusual. Next coin number 3. If you have a 1963 Jefferson nickel with a D mint mark, especially one that appears very dark or black, you may have a coin that deserves a much closer examination. In today's video, we are taking a deep dive into the 1963 with D Jefferson nickel in black condition with a claimed market value of $154. But before you start counting hundreds of thousands of dollars, there is an extremely important lesson about coin values. A claimed price is not automatically the same thing as a documented market price. Current published references and auction records show that ordinary 1963D Jefferson nickels are generally worth far less, while exceptionally high-grade full steps examples can be worth thousands of dollars. PCGS, for example, records a $9,200 auction result for a 1963 with D Jefferson nickel graded MS65, while a 1963 with DMS65 full steps example sold for $5,040 in November 2025. So why is this coin still worth talking about? Because the 1963 with D Jefferson nickel has some fascinating characteristics, and condition can make an enormous difference in the Jefferson nickel series. The Denver Mint produced approximately 276.8 million 1963 Jefferson nickels. The coin has a face value of 5 cents and is composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel. It weighs approximately 5 grams and measures about 21.2 millimeters in diameter. The design was created by Felix Schlag, whose Jefferson nickel design had been used since the beginning of the series in 1938. Now let's talk about the phrase black condition. In coin collecting, black is not an official grading category. Professional grading systems use grades such as good, very fine, extremely fine, about uncirculated, and mint state, along with numerical grades that provide a more precise assessment. A coin described as black is simply being described by its appearance. The dark color could be caused by natural toning, environmental exposure, storage conditions, chemical reactions, dirt, residue, or other surface changes. Therefore, the black appearance alone does not prove that the coin is rare or worth an extraordinary amount. This is a critical point for anyone who collects old coins. A dark coin may look dramatic under a camera, but collectors care about what caused the color. If the dark appearance represents attractive, stable, original toning, it may be viewed differently from a coin that has been chemically treated or environmentally damaged. A coin with residue or corrosion may actually be worth less than a similar coin with original, undamaged surfaces. Another important factor is surface quality. A black-looking coin should be examined closely for signs of environmental damage. Look for green or black deposits, rough areas, pits, spots, scratches, or unnatural discoloration. Because the coin contains copper and nickel, environmental conditions can affect the surface over many decades. If the dark color appears smooth and evenly distributed, it may be toning. If the surface looks rough, crusty, powdery, or damaged, it could be environmental damage. If you are uncertain, professional evaluation is safer than trying to remove anything yourself. Another useful step is weighing the coin. A standard 1963 with ND Jefferson nickel should weigh approximately 5 grams. A digital scale can help identify obvious differences, but weight alone does not prove that a coin is rare. Dirt, wear, damage, scale accuracy, and other factors can influence a measurement. The diameter should also be approximately 21.2 millimeters, and the edge is plain. If your coin has a dramatically unusual diameter, thickness, or edge appearance, that could justify additional research. Let's also discuss the historical significance of the coin. In 1963, the United States was approaching a major period of change. The country was producing enormous quantities of coins to meet demand, and Jefferson nickels were being struck by the hundreds of millions. The 1963 with D nickel therefore represents an important period in American coinage history. Now let's return to the mysterious black appearance. If your coin is black because of natural toning, collectors may evaluate the toning based on originality and eye appeal. But if it is black because someone deliberately treated the coin with chemicals, the situation is completely different. Professional graders may determine that the coin has altered surfaces or environmental damage. The safest approach is always preservation. Put the coin in an inert holder or other appropriate storage material. Keep it away from moisture, extreme temperatures, and chemicals. Avoid PVC-containing materials that can damage coins over time. Handle the coin by the edges and avoid unnecessary contact with the surfaces. If you are building a collection, consider keeping notes about where your coin came from. Provenance can sometimes add interest, particularly when a coin has a documented history. Even when provenance does not directly increase the price, knowing the history of a coin can make collecting more enjoyable. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Jefferson Nickel series is that collectors can search for condition rarities even among dates that were produced in huge quantities. The 1963D is a perfect example. More than 276 million were struck, yet the full steps designation remains difficult to achieve. Graysheet's current guide lists the regular 1963, with DMS issue up to around $120 and the full steps category around $1,000 to $8,500, demonstrating the enormous premium associated with strong strike quality. This is why collectors should always turn the coin over. Some people spend all their time looking at Jefferson's portrait and forget that the reverse can hold one of the most important clues to value. On a Jefferson nickel, the Monticello steps deserve special attention. If you see 5 or 6 clearly separated horizontal steps, do not immediately assume that you have a rare full steps coin. The definition must meet the requirements of the grading service, and professional certification is the best way to establish the designation. Lighting can also make steps appear more or less visible than they actually are. A magnifying glass can help with preliminary inspection, but remember that magnification does not replace professional grading. It simply allows you to see details more clearly. The same principle applies to mint errors. A strange mark under magnification may look dramatic, but it could simply be a scratch. A raised line might be a die characteristic, a die crack, or damage. An indentation could have occurred after the coin left the mint. Proper identification requires knowledge and comparison. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the 1963 with D. Jefferson Nickel, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more videos about rare US coins, Jefferson nickels, Lincoln wheat pennies, Washington quarters, Roosevelt dimes, Kennedy half dollars, valuable mint errors, rare varieties, full steps nickels, coin grading, and fascinating coin discoveries. Check your old collections carefully because the most interesting details are often hidden in places that people overlook. If you enjoy this video, like this video, subscribe the channel, and the next time you find an old Jefferson nickel, don't just look at the date and put it away. Turn it over. Find the mint mark. Study Monticello. Look at the steps. Examine the surfaces. Check for unusual characteristics. Research documented sales. And most importantly, verify before you believe a huge price tag. Because in coin collecting, 5 cents can sometimes be much more interesting than 5 cents. And the real treasure is discovering exactly what you have.